Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Welcome to Plank of the Week. It's Friday night. We are, of course, here for your delectation. It is the one place where you don't have to worry about judging anything because we do it all for you. I've got a fabulous panel for you tonight. I've got Jeremy Kyle here. I've got Peter Bleksley. I've got Samara Gill. I've got Will Geddes. Let's kick things off with the worst Prime Minister of all time. Over to you, Jeremy Kyle.
The farming protest this week. I mean, they've called him two-tier Keir. They're now calling him the farmer harmer, Keir dreadful Starmer. Whilst they said 10,000, but I think it was far more.
I think it was more like 25.
Yeah. Thousands of rural-based farmers and ancillary workers took to the streets in Westminster this week. Peaceful process, which was really rare.
With loads of kids on tractors,
Absolutely.
which was very cute, I thought.
Because the Labour Party, having tried to destroy a really important group, i.e. pensioners, having stuck the boot into veterans who are on the streets, whereas the immigrants are all in hotels, have decided to fix their ire now on the farming community. It's ridiculous. It's called a tractor tax. But in basic terms, it says that if you have a property, assets, a farm of £1 million, you should pay inheritance tax. Now, I would freely admit that I started the week not really understanding it, but we've done it all week. Yeah. And the truth of the matter is that most of the people that work the land have done it for years, and it's about custodians of that and passing it down from generation to generation.
And they don't make much money.
No. Well, then I get told that the average farmer in England would take out as a salary between 1% and 2% of the value. So even if your farm's £3 million, you might make 30, 40 grand a year. Think of what other people earn. For me, it's another example of a government that wants to destroy anybody who's ever put anything in whilst wiping the backside of anybody who comes to this country willy-nilly. These are good people. They're an urban government. They don't understand the countryside.
They don't get it.
And I genuinely think it's going to be another example of attacking a group that are really... In that protest yesterday, it seemed something that's British, actually.
Yeah, no, very much. We got a load. I'm just going to stop you for a second. We've got a load of clips to show here, so I'm going to get off first off with the first one. It's Nigel Farage, who naturally, as you would expect, gets it, and he was there.
Of course he does.
There was no genocidal chanting.
No.
There was no repulsive placards.
No.
There was no throwing things.
No.
No wishing to wipe an entire race from the face of the earth. Call that a protest.
I didn't see any Palestinian flags either.
And I read in
very disappointing. Come on, guys.
Very disappointing.
I read in the Mail this morning, I can't name, because I can't remember, but it was a Labour MP was quite... I mean, there's this article, I'm going to do it later, that even now the Barber wax jacket symbolises the far right.
That's it.
Because
What?
No, seriously.
It does.
Because, and so these people... What I forgot to say in the opening bit there was... They make the food that we eat. You utter pillock. Starmer, are we allowed to say pillock?
You can say pillock, definitely.
I don't understand. And what was he doing? He was stood in Brazil at G20 saying only 500 farms are going to be affected. And actually, there were 30,000 farmers there.
They've got it completely wrong. Two things about Keir Starmer. One, he's a complete and utter plank, which is going to be on this show every single week for as long as he's Prime Minister. He not only said that basically they'd had it checked by the BBC that all of these numbers were right. The BBC actually got it wrong. And the BBC had to then correct. BBC Verify, mind you, 60 journalists who are supposed to check everything but don't even check their own work. It turns out that they mistook a hectare for an acre. Now, most people don't know much about the countryside, but a hectare and an acre are two very different things, and they got it massively wrong. Also, Keir Starmer has the temerity to point out, and again, I suspect this is another lie, that he grew up in the countryside, and his entire family lives in the country, and he's the only one of the family that lives in a city. And then he said, my first job was on a farm, picking stones up out of a field.
I thought his father was a toolmaker.
Yeah. My sister had a pet rabbit, so I grew up on a farm.
We've got a load more clips.
Oh, go.
No, Lee Anderson, sorry to jump in.
No,
there's plenty of time. Lee Anderson got up at Prime Minister's Questions this week and watched for the joke at the end.
Just a few weeks ago, from that dispatch box, the Minister for Rural Affairs said that he'd been congratulated by a farmer over the introduction of the inheritance tax. Now, I think this farmer must have been a cannabis farmer, because just yesterday we had 10,000 farmers on Whitehall protesting against this madcap decision. So does the Deputy Prime Minister agree with me that this decision should be thrown in the trash can along with Rachel from Accounts' CV?
Rachel from Accounts, I think it's going to stick, isn't it?
I've got that.
Rachel from Accounts, absolutely incredible.
For me, there's something else about this government. They seem to want to target anybody who is successful, builds a business, runs a family business. This belief that I did this
entrepreneurs,
the other day. But also like private education. Their assumption that everybody that sends their kids to private school is a multi-millionaire. My parents really scraped. That was their decision. I think it's outrageous. The farming community is massively important, and this won't go away. This is another poll tax moment too in 16 weeks.
Absolutely ridiculous.
I think it could even be the miners.
Yeah. Now, some people take this story more seriously than others, right? Sky News, one of our competitors, you might say. I don't call them competitors because they're not in our league.
No.
But here's their assumption about what might happen leading up to the farmers' protest. Have a look.
You're watching Sky News Today. Still to come, farmers preparing to protest in Westminster as inheritance tax anger grows. We'll be speaking to cereal farmer Ollie House.
I mean, things are getting a bit hot.
Things are really
getting a bit hot down in the home counties down there. That's,
Who let that go?
And they let it go twice. It didn't just go once, but twice. You know, the old Hezbollah rockets coming up from Wiltshire. You know, we're coming in our tractors. First, we're going to fire a few shadow missiles up first. You know, bloody amazing. Jeremy Clarkson, of course, was there. And he is a very dangerous man to take on. I think the government have underestimated it. Because, again, the BBC and the whole kind of, you know, media establishment and the glitterati in London all think, oh, Jeremy Clarkson is this horrible sort of oafish right-winger who drives around in petrol-guzzling, gas-guzzling cars and says horrible things about Meghan Markle. Well, that's why we love him, right? That's why everybody likes the guy. Have a look what he had to say.
Classic BBC there. Classic. Oh, yeah.
Have you
Are you listening to this?
Have you tried to get a GP appointment lately?
Yes.
Right.
I just recently had a heart attack.
OK, so you know it's tough.
Yes.
So where should they get the money from if it's not from farmers?
From farmers.
You
hear that, everyone?
With
BBC
assets.
thinks you should be paying for everything.
That's Victoria Derbyshire there questioning him, making out that she's a government spokesperson because she's saying, well, where else are they supposed to get the money from? Well, sorry.
Keir Starmer said the BBC had checked the figures.
Yeah. And they haven't.
Jezza stood up and said, when have they become the mouthpiece for this infernal government? It's extraordinary.
But she's asking questions as though the money has to be found somewhere for the NHS. That's not the BBC's job.
No.
The money doesn't have to be found for the NHS. The NHS has to become more efficient. It's that simple. But guess what? The BBC cut this bit out of the interview. This is how it actually ended.
I must get on. I've got more important people to talk to in the news right now. People with actual audiences.
People with actual audiences, because, you know, we all
You're
know...
right about him. He's a good man.
He's not to be messed with,
No.
and he will be... I mean, somebody said to me today, potentially, he probably wouldn't do it because of his health, but he could potentially become a sort of Trump-like figure. Because people love his TV show, they love his columns in the newspapers, in the Sunday Times, they love his prognostications, they like what he stands for. I mean, see the queues of people who are going to his farm.
He's a loyal bloke
He's making beer, they're buying his beer in droves.
I went there last week. I went to his farm shop last week.
You said the beer was great.
Surely.
And first and foremost, let's just wish him well with his recovery.
Yes.
from his heart
Yeah.
attack.
Absolutely.
That's vitally important. Get well soon. I went to his farm shop. It's really quite small. And I was surprised by just how tiny it was. And I bought some of his Hawkstone lager.
Yeah. Nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I have to say, other lagers are available, and it wasn't cheap. But by crikey, was it delicious.
Very good.
Nice.
Well, that's a great endorsement.
Well, I have
Coming
to say,
to you.
yeah, the last thing I was going to say is, you know, as a born and bred townie, I've watched that Clarkson Farm show. I don't know whether you guys have. And I have to say, it's educated me
It's a
more
great show.
about farming and about the toils and troubles that the farmers are under. And I compel anybody who doesn't really understand what's going on to go and watch it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, there shouldn't be people that don't understand what's going on. You know, these idiots that are running the government should know how the farming community works. They should know how Britain
they
works.
should, yeah.
They shouldn't just know how to order, you know, a soy latte
I'll tell you
on
why
Upper Street.
I'll tell you why they should know as well, because a lot of the seats that they won in this last election have rural parts to their communities, and this will destroy them.
Well, do you know what? Tragically, a lot of the farmers voted for the Labour Party because Keir Starmer stood in front of them and for an hour told them he wouldn't put taxes up at the farmers' convention at their conference, and so they
lied. What a shock.
I had a farmer on my show on Monday, I think it was, of this week, and he said something which was really quite emotional. He said, you know, when the Russians went and took the farms off of all their farmers after the First World War, at least they had the decency to shoot them first. Huh? How about that? Anyway, this is meant to be a comedy show, so on you go.
Well, look at the jacket.
On you go,
Can I have a tea, please, Bob?
Speaking of comedy shows, what about the CPS?
Rewind to the 23rd of July.
Yes.
Do you remember those balmy days of summer? Anyway, there was a proper dust-up in Manchester Airport.
There was.
We've seen loads of clips of it.
We'll see some more.
What we haven't seen is all the evidence,
Yeah.
because, of course, there was incidents apparently at a Starbucks and
Right.
incidents perhaps on an aeroplane that preceded everything that we've seen. Anyway, Greater Manchester Police did their investigation and in the middle of August submitted a file to the CPS for their consideration as to whether charges should be brought.
Because the punch-up stuff is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
You see two men attacking three police officers, breaking one of their noses. I think you see one of the men hitting his own mother.
Yes, but what is also being investigated, not by the CPS, but by the IOPC,
Right.
the Independent Office of Police Conduct, is the actions of a police officer who was seen in the very first clip released
Yes.
to stamp on someone.
Right.
So I suspect there is a bit of shenanigans going on
Yeah.
between the CPS and the IOPC.
Right.
And because I'm a professional broadcaster, I'm not going to speculate as to what their decisions may be.
Right.
What I will say is, however, I think those two organisations are colluding and will release their decisions at the same time.
Simultaneously,
So how
yes.
is it that the copper, and nobody condones what we saw, but we didn't see all of it. We firstly saw him stamping. Everybody was appalled. It's vile. He gets suspended. He's being investigated. I want somebody to answer me in one of these programmes. These two men, who in an area of high security where officers have guns, and in America,
Yeah.
we talked about this before, he'd probably
Yeah.
been shot.
Yeah.
They go on television with their trendy lawyer. They haven't been shot. Why does anybody... Why? Why is that?
Because a decision could have been given a lot earlier, but generally speaking, in the UK, people don't riot in December, January and February.
And it's not because of the colour of their skin and the police are worried about a reaction.
These
Well, it could be.
decisions will be
Very much
will be
so.
be released together, and they'll be released
I see.
in the grip of winter.
Yeah.
So if people are upset about it, they're not going to take to the streets.
I think it's
to
two-tier poli-
express
I think
their
it's another
disquiet.
example.
Although, to be
Two
fair, the
police.
second video that was released of the actual punch-up kind of cooled an awful lot of those people down, because in the end, this was less defensible than it was before they saw that.
Yeah.
But what's also interesting, and you've said this before, Peter, is the police are also now investigating who leaked the video, as
Yeah.
if that's important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Really, like as if that's crime of the century. Do me a favour, whoever leaked that video has done the nation a great favour.
Absolutely right.
Because
And of course,
we've
we
got
also know
some backstory.
We also know this week the Reform Party have launched a private prosecution against the two individuals because they're not happy with what the CPS has done. So we'll see what happens with that. Over to you, Samara.
Yeah.
We're going to take a trip down to the Southern Hemisphere.
Yeah, I'm going to take you guys to this terrible place where terrible things seem to be happening. It's quite interesting. I think this whole story is about race politics, and I think it might come to the UK.
Yeah.
So basically what's happened is the native Maori people, I think we've got a clip that we can show, have gone and done this. When you look at that, you think, oh, they're trying to take their water away. They're trying to take their rights away. What's this parliament trying to do against these people?
Yeah.
No, it's actually this very nice and civil guy called David Sweeney who's in the parliament, and he's trying to pass a bill so that all New Zealand people are equal. That's what that woman just ripped up.
Right.
So,
So she doesn't want that.
Yeah, so it's inherently undemocratic
Right.
what they've just done. There was a bill
So she
basically...
want people to be more equal than others then, just like in 1984?
I actually know the hacker, and I'll give you a quick interpretation of part
Why
of
don't you
it.
give us an impression?
Well, just a little bit of it. It goes, if I don't get you with this one, I'll get you with that one.
Yeah, but it's
It's
an
an old-
intimidation tactic.
An old one from Shepherd's Bush Police Station in the 70s.
Yeah, in the old days
Yeah.
stuff, yeah.
In the custody
Will,
suite.
over to you. Talking of madness,
Charge room.
you've got
Well, this is
something
quite- yeah,
from,
this is quite
the
serious,
the
really.
climate Cymru scenario.
Well, yeah, climate Cymru. Well, let's just give it a very summary line, which is Wales have declared war on dogs.
yes, I
They
know.
hate dogs.
I know. They don't like them, do they?
They don't
They're
like
all
dogs.
racist. That's why the dogs are racist.
And the dogs are racist.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but you know, I wouldn't know, but most
well,
dogs
I'm pretty sure my
apparently
dog's
are.
not racist. You
Is
know?
yours not?
Yeah, my dog will go up to anyone if he thinks everyone's got food for him, basically.
I think that's generally the
Yeah.
rule with most
You know,
dogs. They
yeah.
either like you or they don't. It's one of the two. But
Although
anyway,
I had a great reaction from people who were ringing into my show and giving me voice messages and things. I had one guy rang in and said, I'm pretty sure my 3 cockapoos are plotting to invade Poland. He said, I think I've just managed to nip it in the bud before they head over there.
But to sort of bring it back to what's going on right now, this is a very bizarre survey that's been undertaken, an initiative by the Welsh Government and Climate Cymru.
Yeah.
Again, it's those climate evil people.
Clowns.
Again, climate clowns. And their target is to make Wales racism-free by 2030.
They obviously haven't
by
been to
2030.
Swansea. They obviously haven't been to Swansea.
It's only 6 years. It's only 6 years away. So I mean, I think we should cheer for them.
Yeah.
To
the
try and
group's
achieve that
name
objective.
officially, I'm told, is the Climate Cymru Ethnic Minorities Group.
Yes.
Which is quite a mouthful, isn't it?
It is quite a mouthful.
Yeah.
But what they want to
Doesn't
do
roll off the
fundamentally
tongue.
is.
I wonder what it is in Welsh.
So
Let's not even go there.
Well, it wasn't just about dogs, was it?
Yeah.
It was saying that 90 plus. This organisation was saying 90% of Wales is racist. How do you judge that then? How do you, I'm sorry, you're racist. You're not.
Well, 90% of Wales doesn't have any people in it.
No,
If
exactly.
you should remember one thing. It was only last week at the Welsh Labour Party conference that Keir Starmer said that the Welsh Government was a beacon for what he hopes to achieve in the United Kingdom, in Great Britain. I think that's dangerous.
Yeah, well, he's heading that way because, you know,
25 years they've been in.
Worst performing economy in Britain, worst performing health service in Britain, worst performing schools in Britain.
Yes.
So he's doing well. He's going that way.
So anyway, bringing it back, if I may, to basically the dog-free zones that they're trying to create in Wales. Because apparently a lot of various ethnic groups have complained that dogs aren't.
One person's complained.
Well, there was one woman who apparently said that she felt very intimidated by a dog. And she was from a particular ethnic group.
Right.
But there's
Have
also
they told
this
us
issue
which
that
ethnic group?
dogs that weren't on leashes. Now, I don't know about anywhere else in the UK. I've spent 59 years on this planet.
Right.
And I have to say, I've never had a problem with dogs being off the leash unless they're an XL bully or something which is going to try and chew my leg off. But the long and the short of it is, how can you create in such a rural expanse like Wales laws which are going to make areas dog-free, but also dogs can't...
Are they going to have dog police or something?
It's pandering.
It's bizarre.
It's pandering to mob rule yet again.
Correct, Peter.
Except it's not even mob rule.
Mob rule.
But
Do you
it's
think
not
there are
mob rule.
racist pussies?
No, I don't know. I've never heard of that. They don't go out as much, do they?
No.
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 So
I
I
mean, and
guess
how
not.
do you... I mean, I'm not trying to be rude here. You're a policeman. If I was your boss and I said, go and find out if that dog... Go on, Bleksley, go and find out if those dogs there are racist. How would you do that?
Sarge, can I focus on the pussies, please?
Yeah, I mean, if only they would galvanise this into thinking about 30% of their children are in poverty. In Wales. So it's just ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, but I've got some good news for you. We've managed to find a racist dog.
Oh, great.
This is from Larry David's show.
He's a cutie. What the heck?
I think it's you, Wanda.
You have a racist dog. The dog hates black people. There, you trained the dog to hate black people?
No, I didn't train it to hate black people.
Has it barked at any white people?
He hasn't barked.
Exactly. Your dog is racist.
Sheriff's racist?
Sheriff? That's a perfect name for a racist dog.
What a
That's
brilliant
a great show, that, isn't
That's
it?
a great
Brilliant show. Anyway, that's enough about racist dogs. Quite a good start, though, for Plank of the Week. Coming up, we're going to be talking about the Home Office and how useless they are at stopping people from coming here. And then when they get here, giving them chances to just stay here for the rest of the time. Also, we might be talking about the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Richard III. Sorry, Rachel Thieves. We'll be back with more on Plank after this. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. I'm here, of course, with this fabulous panel who have just already kicked us off with 4 brilliant suggestions for Plank of the Week. I'm going to go with the Home Office because the Home Office have had all sorts of problems of late. Ever since the Labour government have got in, they seem to have got worse than they were under the Tories. And we got some figures this week to show how asylum seekers are taking the mickey out of the system now, even more than they ever did before. So, for example, the figures of people coming in claiming to be gay, have tripled since the last time they were taken in 2022. So now, you might think this is a small number, but it's 2,133 people who have apparently got into this country claiming asylum because they're gay, right? And then because they're gay, they can't be deported. So effectively, they can be just immediately given asylum because it doesn't matter whether you refuse them
So you can
the
get
requirements.
asylum by saying you're gay?
You can get asylum by saying you're gay.
Yeah.
And there's a test of course, but nobody wants to do it.
Yeah, I was gonna
because
say.
you can't really do a test to see whether someone's gay.
Right.
Why?
We've already
I want to know
had
the test.
I don't mean to be rude. We've already had your test of a dog's
Well,
racist.
I mean,
How
I
do you
could come up.
discover if
I
somebody's
mean, I
gay?
could come up with a test, but I don't think it would be allowed. I can't say, but these people are saying that if I'm sent back to my homeland, I will obviously be persecuted.
And do you think people might make that up?
I might even be killed. They're being told by smart people.
That's a smart tactic.
They're
Because,
being told
in most Middle Eastern countries, for example, it is haram. It is something that you would end up being executed for. So, yes, a smart tactic.
So these are the 8 countries, right, from which people are coming, where 100% of claims are granted, OK? Here are the countries: Afghanistan, El Salvador, Syria, Eritrea, Myanmar, Libya, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Yemen. Now, I've got a problem with St. Vincent here because I've been to St. Vincent, right? I've been to Mustique, which is part of the Grenadines. Yep. I've been to Basil's Bar. Basil is a black guy who runs a fantastic cocktail bar. You can only go there if you're staying on the island or if you're coming on a yacht, right? I happen to be coming on a yacht because I couldn't afford to rent David Bowie's house or Princess Margaret's house.
Do you like the red? Do you like the red phone boxes?
I love the red phone boxes. It's an amazing place. But they are not going to be persecuted if they're sent back to the West Indies. It's just not going to happen.
That is absolute.
Isn't that bonkers?
That's bonkers. That, I don't know about the others. St. Vincent in the Grenadines, that's rubbish.
It is rubbish.
Although it is very much haram, it is persecutable, and prosecutable. The fact is, those communities do exist. They're kind of just overlooked, and as long as they're not blatant, and as long as they're not running around singing
there's no question. There's no question that there are countries of in this world where gay people will be prosecuted, and persecuted, and all that. But the fact is that that's not what's going on here. What's going on here is that these guys are being advised. This is what you say. In the same way that they're advised to say that they've converted to Christianity, or the latest one actually is tell them you're from Eritrea. Because Eritrea happens to have a war going on at the moment. And there's a load of people coming in from Morocco and other countries in North Africa. And because the Home Office is so useless, they don't know the difference.
But also they throw all their documentation off the boat.
But what I'm saying is they ought to be able to tell whether people are from
to come
a
from
particular
Eritrea,
country.
be gay, and then you're fine.
Also, totally fine to be gay in France, where they came from.
Exactly right.
So one of the easiest ways to get around that would be to ensure you've got good language speakers actually at an interview process.
Well, do you know, this happened during the Albanian sort of invasion as well, because when Kosovo was part of that sort of ethnic cleansing that was going on, the Serbs were ethnically cleansing Kosovan Muslims, right, who were Albanian technically, but they weren't actually from Albania. All these Albanians came over who were basically criminals and said, "Oh yeah, I'm from Kosovo," and nobody could tell because they didn't have any experts who could tell the language.
I know, and that's the bizarre thing.
You just think, to talk about repeatedly. How crap, seriously, is the Home Office? It is beyond me that every time we do anything on this and other shows, people say it's not fit for purpose. That's a disgrace nationally, isn't it?
It hasn't been fit for purpose for years. And how is it possible as well that if you go to court and you're a foreigner, you get a translator to help you with your case? If you go to have a child, even though you're a foreign national, delivered into a hospital in Britain, you get a translator. Why have the Home Office not got any translators to talk to these people to find out where they're from?
But if you work for the Home Office for decades and climb that greasy pole of promotion, you will inevitably be knighted and thereafter be a sir.
Exactly. Anyway, Rachel Reeves, over to you. Rachel Thieves.
I sort of... They made a big thing, didn't they, about how Rachel Reeves was going to be...
And there she is.
There she is, yes. Looking...
This is when she was once king of the nation, because, of course, you remember, you've seen all these memes that have been going around. We've got Rachel Reeves as the winner of the FA Cup, first woman on the moon, first woman to fly across the Atlantic, all of that.
She's an interesting one because they made a big thing, didn't they? First female chancellor. Turns out everybody now has seemingly in my world and our world has got to the point where every day we wake up and go, oh, they've lied about something else. They spent 14 years, quite rightly in the end, slagging off the Tories and going, you don't do what you say you're going to do and you lie and we were going to have different government. Well, they've lied to pensioners, they've lied to farmers. We've talked about that. This lady is the Chancellor of the Exchequer, right? Not intent with screwing people. Right. Apparently she lied on her CV. She described herself at the time in the bank as an economist. Was a bloody teller. Apparently nothing was wrong with being a teller.
She was running the complaints line, I think. People would ring up.
Hello.
Hello. My name's Rachel. What's the
Rachel Thieves.
Rachel Thieves.
We've lost a tenner. And literally has changed her CV. And you go back to the Tories, and I'm not defending them. Every week you'd hear, have they broken the ministerial code? You should start to ask yourself, after a short space of time of 4 months, Are these people fit for purpose?
No.
She's
well, they're all
she's
liars.
another one.
But they
liars.
Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves in particular have told more lies since they've been in charge. People used to call it a U-turn. It's not a U-turn. You said you were going to do something, you didn't do it. You said you weren't going to do something, you did it.
I don't think they had any plan at all, mate.
There's an interesting one on this whole Rachel Reeves CV as well, because actually it's a criminal offence to obtain employment if you've lied or exaggerated on your CV.
So
I think it'd be interesting to do a forensic on that and actually tear it apart.
Yeah, but she had a book right before she became Chancellor, which was all about women in the economy and sort of trying to champion women in the financial field. Turns out most of that was plagiarised, lots of different bits and pieces of it. So she's got a track record of being a liar.
Well, she's got a track record of being a liar. She said she worked at the Bank of England for 10 years, for a decade. She worked there for 6 years. Yeah. How can you not remember how long you worked for somewhere? And people who worked with her at the Bank of England said she was pretty useless.
And those sorts of things amongst the electorate. We've talked seriously about farmers, we've talked about the pensioners, we've talked about all these ridiculous things. The British people, I think, half of them don't give a damn anymore because they're so frustrated. But those sorts of things, right? They remember that.
Yeah.
Our Chancellor lied on her CV.
Yeah.
That's awful.
And then she changed it, so she admitted that she lied. Right now, Richard Holden, who used to be the Conservative Party chairman, is now just an MP. He's written a letter in which he's basically asked her specific questions. When did you work at the Bank of England? What was your job title? When did you work at HBOS? What was your job title? How long were you there? Specific questions. Of course, she hasn't answered. But the key to it as well is whether she's breached the ministerial code.
Yeah.
Because the ministerial code says you have to be honest, you have to be truthful, and you have to be transparent.
And also, along with
Starmer,
again, quite rightly, they made a massive play week in, week out about the Tories who had lied and abused their positions. And this lot are as bad, if not worse.
Yeah. The gloomy thing about all of this is it just goes to show how shallow the talent pool of our politics is.
Yes.
It really,
because
really
if she was to have to resign, which she will have to do if she's found to be in breach of the ministerial code, and I think she will be, I think she'll be gone, who the hell do they give the job to?
Well, exactly,
Because if you look around...
I'm going to go further. I think
he's out as well.
No, I think he's going to have her as the sacrificial lamb about pensioners and the farmers when he realises he's really strong. Yeah. And I think he will lose her and that will save his back. And I think she will go to the back benches and cause a lot of problems.
Well, like all Stalinists,
that.
he's ruthless. And I mean, he didn't
Is he, though?
Sue Gray didn't last long, did she? She was meant to be the next big thing, and suddenly she's out of a job.
But when he was talking from G20 from Brazil, when we were talking about the farmers thing, not very assured, is he, for the Prime Minister? Clipped tones and a bit...
Terrible.
To me, he looks dodgy.
Yeah. There's something, I keep saying this, there's something about him which makes me think he's not going to last.
I wonder what that might be.
He's not going to keep the course. Something bad is going to happen to him. And it's not, there's a lot of rumours around, right? So I think something bad will happen to him sometime between now and the end of next year. And I think he'll be gone.
Remember it here from Sir Michael Graham.
I've been saying it for a while. I've been saying it actually since July. I went away on holiday in the middle of July, and I said, by the time I come back, the honeymoon's over for this crowd. And it was.
You predicted a Trump landslide.
I did.
You predicted that your breakfast show would be astonishing.
Yes,
and you are now,
so it is.
which it is. And you're now saying that Keir Starmer will be gone by the end of 2025.
Who's going to win the 2:30 at Newmarket tomorrow?
I can't tell you yet, but if you show me the running order,
Let's say the flat season's over. There's no racing at Newmarket, you idiot.
All right, there's no racing at Newmarket, you idiot. Apparently, there is no 2:30.
I reckon that's why he's getting his use of the jet. He's getting his air miles up.
He should be the sports minister for the Labour Party. I don't think about it. Right, Mr. Bleksley. Let's hear about what the police have been up to.
This is a public service announcement.
Yes.
If your 9-year-old calls another child a nasty name in the playground, report it to the police immediately.
Get them down there.
What name?
This is the state of our country.
Yeah.
The police, who are tasked with maintaining law and order, are now questioning and reporting matters as a non-crime hate incident.
Yes.
If a 9-year-old calls another
I've got a question for you.
A nasty name.
What's the point of the police looking into things that aren't crimes? What are they doing it for?
I concur entirely.
I mean, it's not a crime.
But this whole concept of non-crime hate incidents has been dreamt up by the most useless organisation on the face of the entire planet Earth, which is the College of Policing.
Yes.
It is so woke, it is so in the grip of academia that all it does is spew out word salad after word salad of utter pseudo-intellectual gobbledygook, claptrap nonsense.
True. Even Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, who's not exactly, unwoke, said they need more common sense in the police.
She?
Yeah.
They must be bad.
She actually said, particularly when it comes to these non-crime hate incidents, we need more common sense.
Policing, in its very essence, is a simple thing. Of course, you have cases with complexities, but at its essence, it is simple. But because now we have all these university-educated police chiefs and their underlings, their sycophantic underlings, they just spew out all this tripe. They are so remote and removed from the concerns of people on the streets and in their homes that they are detached, they are elite, and they are fundamentally useless.
They are indeed. And let's look at what happened to Allison Pearson, a good friend of ours from the Daily Telegraph. She was visited upon by 2 police officers on Remembrance Sunday at about 10:40 in the morning to be told that a complaint had been made about some tweet that she'd put up a year before. They wouldn't tell her what it was. They wouldn't tell her what she was then required to do other than to speak to them at her leisure down at the police station. Let's have a look at what she said to Julie Hartley-Brewer.
It's a real big brother thing, isn't it, really? And if someone like me, like you, I try to speak out for normal people, what normal people's reaction was, I think we can agree most people watching you will not be thinking this is a brilliant use of police time.
It's a fundamental tenet of English law, British law, that if you're accused of something, you know who the accuser is and what it is you're accused of.
Yes.
They didn't tell Alison either of those things.
It's almost as if we've got to a point with policing. I'd love to what people think of this, whereby the victim, the police now finds reasons for the victim to somehow be responsible, and for the person who's perpetrated the crime, what excuse they can come up, whether it's mental illness or they're claiming, to get away with it. Right and wrong, break the law, face the consequences.
What was interesting here as well, Will, was the fact that all the lefties sort of got behind the police, which never used to happen, right? Because the lefties now are all going, oh, yeah, but it's Alison Pearson. She's a horrible right-wing Brexiteer. So they should definitely lock her up, definitely. She's obviously been racist. They all jump to the defence of the police.
The lefties always do. They always do. They always do. They're going to jump on whichever side's going to get the greatest groundswell of support that they could potentially get. But also, Peter, did you see the other one the other day that apparently some other child got visited for saying that her schoolmate smelt of fish, and she got arrested as well, or certainly.
I mean, maybe she did smell of fish. I don't know. It doesn't sound like an offence to me, does it? It's not an offence.
Maybe her father's a fishmonger.
Maybe.
Who knows?
Who can say? Just by the way, on talking of lefties, this has nothing to do with Plank of the Week, but I just want to have a moment's silence for our good friends at The Guardian. Because they're going through a particularly tough time at the moment.
Could we just hold hands a minute?
Can you just hold hands because I'm afraid that
they've come off X,
they've come off X first of all.
No,
the trauma continues because Donald Trump's going to be the next president. But worse than that, The Guardian, who pride themselves on a sort of community-based newspaper, have decided to completely abandon all of the people that work for them and sell The Observer off to another group. So they've had a meeting and they're all going to go on strike.
Brilliant.
So it's the greatest idea ever. So well done. So no more Guardian. Right, coming up, we're going to be over to Hollywood, where there's been some pretty interesting action, and also some royal family action as well. We're going to go to Windsor, a place you know well. Coming up next on Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. I don't know what we're going to do this week because, again, we've got so many brilliant nominations. Internationally, our correspondent Samara, you look around the world for us.
Is that your title?
We've been to New Zealand, and now we're going to America. Tell us what you got.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really good example of the virtue signalling left and sort of the victim complex that they build around themselves. Whoopi Goldberg, it was her birthday, okay? So she goes to this bakery just outside of New York, in Jersey, and she asked for some cupcakes, and she said that they refused to make them for her because of her political views. If you think Rory Stewart and Alistair Campbell were wrong about the election, they were about 1,000 times wrong, and they made a whole song and dance about the whole thing. And they actually said that Trump lost because the entirety of America is racist and sexist.
White women are racist,
Yeah.
and that cost us the election. And Whoopi Goldberg refuses to say his name.
So-
Cupcakes, my ass.
It's been a really terrible week for her, but obviously the cherry on top, so to speak, was that she got denied cupcakes.
Very good.
But not on top of the cupcake.
No cherry on the cupcake.
Yes. Turns out she's come for this bakery. It's a family-run business.
Yeah.
It's 134 years old.
Right.
It's called Halterman's. It's an iconic bakery. And the thing that happened was they didn't deny her. Their oven was broken because they're in a building which is sort of 200 years old and doesn't work. So she made this whole hullabaloo.
So she just made it up?
Yeah, she tried to cancel the business. The owner was getting on Fox News crying because she was so worried about losing something that's been in her family for 4 generations.
Disgraceful.
And this is all because Whoopi just goes and says to sort of 5 million people, oh yeah, like, you know, I was denied cupcakes because of my political views. No, you wasn't because of that.
Well, let's have a look. We've got a clip, I think, of Whoopi Goldberg slandering this bakery. Have a look.
The place that made these refused to make them for me.
Oh, really?
Yes.
What? Oh,
No. Let me explain. They said that their ovens had gone down. Can't be because I'm a woman, but perhaps they did not like my politics.
Yeah. I thought she was going to say her colour. I genuinely thought she was going to say, is it because of the colour of my skin? I did when you started the story. That is unbelievable.
No, because the narrative, though, has not been about Kamala Harris being a woman of colour. It's been about the fact that she's a woman, because they've tried to paint Donald Trump as this misogynistic hate figure. And he's
I'm just going to
really,
go back to what I said at Brexit. 82 million Americans voted him. He's the next president. Do one, Carmel, and nobody wanted to end of. Shut
But it's
up.
not anything to do with the war between men and women. It's ridiculous. But here's a statement from the bakery.
She was too important for a boiler breakdown, that she had to have her pastries, and if it wasn't coming to her, it must have been someone else's fault. It must have been a directed insult to her. That would never be the case. Staten Islanders don't serve people based on their political opinions. They serve everyone who comes through their doors. And that is the case with the Halterman's family.
They've got insane, haven't they, the left?
I'm glad he stuck up for himself, though. I'm glad he got that fun.
It's also a great example of the lack of self-awareness that a lot of these liberal elites have, where they think that, you know, she thought that she could just say something on a massive show and then, you know, she didn't think about the family business that she was potentially
Isn't
destroying.
the irony that the programmes like The View and people like Whoopi Goldberg have made a career out of apparently arguing for how minorities are crushed, and yet wouldn't give a toss about destroying a family business?
No, exactly right. And I can happily report to you that as a result of her expose,
business gone through the roof, has it?
Gone absolutely. People are queuing up around the corner. And guess what? An awful lot of Trump supporters keep turning up, buying the place out, and just absolutely giving them loads of money. So that's brilliant. Also, got some other added attractions for you from Whoopi Goldberg this week. Have a look at this.
You didn't get here by yourself, man. You can't do this without us. And if we don't let you, you don't get any. It's that simple.
Whoopi Goldberg is going on sex strike. She's threatening men that you don't get any if we don't give it to you. And you go, well, thank God for that. Can't imagine anything more frightening.
I can't believe there are many takers, but I could be missing.
Well,
the point.
I mean, there is this whole movement which started
A sex ban.
They started it after Trump got elected. There were women doing, you know, selfies into TikTok, going, good luck getting laid in Miami, and people going, what are you talking about? And these women, I think you'd probably know more about this than anybody, Samara.
Yeah, I mean, if you have blue or pink hair, just get the memo. No one wants to have sex with you.
Yeah.
It's just like, honestly, it's like the liberal women don't understand that. But yeah, this whole sex strike thing, it just goes to the whole very issue of, you know, people thinking that this election wasn't won on the economy and the greed in people's pockets. It was not about, you know, men versus women.
No.
Of course, it was about actually people saying, no, I feel really poor and I think I want something that guy's selling me. Not that random woman on psychobabble.
Yeah, they tried to invent this narrative, like Whoopi Goldberg just did about that bakery, to create something that wasn't there. To say that, well, the reason that Trump won is because of all these horrible misogynistic men. And they're once again, trying to disparage women.
Do you not find there's a real irony, irony as well? I found out last week, we talked about it, that all of these big celebrities that came out and endorsed Kamala Harris were paid money. Do you know that? They were paid to do these endorsements. And they go on about
that's why they're
Donald
in massive
Trump.
debt.
Yeah,
isn't
and
it?
they call him a misogynist. And he's not perfect. But do you not find it really interesting that a billionaire, a real estate billionaire, resonates with normal Americans far more than any of these bloody celebrities and these people?
As does Elon Musk.
Of course.
And they're terrified of it because they don't know what to do about it. I mean, that's the funny thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, the way that now, of course, Donald Trump puts two fingers up to all of them because he's promoted and appointed the first female chief of staff in the history of the White House.
Exactly.
Which I bet Kamala Harris wouldn't have done.
A 27-year-old woman as his press secretary.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting couple of picks that he's had, and he's just saying, no, it's not about that for me. It's about picking the best person for the job, and you don't understand that. And you're right about who voted for him. He's aspirational, and these celebrities just spoke down to people, whereas he's lifting people up.
Why would you
and I think
listen
that's
to
the fundamental difference.
a billionaire pop star? But they listen to him because he says, I'm going to make your lives better.
Yeah.
And middle America, we know, from left to right, middle America don't give a toss about identity politics. And not being disrespectful, the abortion thing, I'm sure, is important for many. But actually, gas, cost of food, and the problem with migrants. Fact.
But I think it also is the benefit that he's actually pushed back to the states. He's removing and fragmenting the whole federal system, which has got this sort of big brother approach, as we're seeing over here right now, and putting the laws back into the hands of the states for them to actually decide on individuals.
Yeah,
so if you're in a state where the abortion rules or laws are not to your liking, you're not impinged across the entire country.
Yeah.
This is specific to state. Go to another state.
Donald Trump now stands as a political colossus on the global stage. He won the popular vote. He won the Electoral College vote. The House of Representatives, House of Representatives. They're both Republican.
Yeah.
It's going to be one.
There is a meme, by the way, of Rachel Reeves. Here I am as a senator in the United States Senate, because of course she did that as well. But we got to move on.
You called Trump's victory.
It tells you enough when the whole of the Senate and Congress are dominated by Republicans as well. What does that tell you about the country?
Let's talk about what Windsor Castle getting burgled tells you about the country.
Oh yes,
right?
Oh yes.
Or the Windsor Estate, I should say.
The Windsor Estate. Yes, exactly.
Whereabouts was burgled?
You might know.
It was.
Which gate this is, but Will explain it to you. Will, of course,
so what's happened?
Expert,
unfortunately, from time to time, the royal estates will be obviously have incursions on.
Yeah.
And these incursions are usually everything from protesters like Fathers for Justice, you remember out the front of Buckingham Palace, through to Michael Fagan sitting on the side of the Queen's bed. Sure. This was probably less of a profile in so much as it was an assault in the castle so much as stealing farm equipment, which many, quite ironically this week, obviously with poor farmers, that individuals were breaking in to get this farm equipment and make off with it, and managed to get off with it. The thing that I find surprising, because obviously I get in my day job...
The gate that they went through is a gate that is used by William and Kate, right?
Correct,
That's the point of this story, because at the end of the day, they got very close to within about 5 minutes of where they were sleeping.
That gate, by the way.
Well, there weren't police on
No, there weren't.
There's supposed to be 24-hour police on that.
So they've got a mixture of police, but also private security, which is there. And the private security, I believe, is the one element that unfortunately fell down here.
What, so they weren't there?
Well, I don't know what the question is. I don't think we'll ever really get to hear exactly.
I'm driving a combine out, but there's nobody.
Well, hang on.
But the long and the short of it is that these kinds of sites, everywhere from Buckingham Palace to Windsor Castle to Balmoral, these get regularly tested by what they call the anti-terrorist survey teams. Now, I've worked on some of the jobs which are very similar to that, where you do what we call penetration testing. You try and break in without getting detected.
Right.
This place, what this showed up is albeit a small incident, has significant implications. As
Do you think
mentioned,
this might be an inside job then to test it?
No, I don't think it was. I think it was. This is what's so embarrassing. The fact is, yes, as you rightly say, they could get to William and Kate. That you would have royals travelling through this gate. For a terrorist group, and we know next year is going to look pretty damn daunting in terms of Al-Qaeda 2.0, Islamic State, ISIS-K, and various other groups which have their intentions on here, Europe, and the Americas. We have a situation here which is basically showing that one of our most sensitive locations isn't being protected adequately.
Right.
And
I read an explanation, right, that one, they couldn't find enough people to be armed guards on the gate.
Yeah.
But also, secondly, that the police had said that tourists had complained they didn't like seeing police officers walking around with automatic weapons. which I don't find.
I
don't find that
lived on the
plausible.
long walk, and it's about half a mile up, and it's the farm entrance.
Yeah.
And there's a police hut, and then it takes you into the farm at the bottom where she had all the horses and the cows and everything.
Right. So you know where it is.
Yeah. In fact, I actually videoed
Jeremy?
the practicing of the Queen's funeral from my mate's house there in the middle of the night, and it's just at the top of that lane. I mean, if that's a private security firm, it's
not good.
a massive lapse.
It's a massive lapse, but it just shows the vulnerability that we have, obviously, the royal family, which is a prize target for terrorists, because it has the maximum
Well, they shouldn't be able to
publicity.
get anywhere near them.
And and you know what, Mike? The thing is they could have got into that area, as you know, Jez, and they could have detonated a device.
Absolutely.
The fact that it didn't
Planted
actually
something.
but the fact it was on that estate,
They got away.
bad enough.
They got away with an Isuzu truck and a quad bike. Right? And they scaled a 6-foot fence. They ram-raided through the thing. I mean, that must have taken quite a while.
detection.
Right.
No intrusion detection.
No intrusion.
Somebody on my on my show.
What now? The royals have an experience that millions of Brits have.
Yeah.
In that they have their car stolen or their house burgled, or they otherwise become a victim of crime. And millions of people are victims of crime. And as with this one, thus far, unsolved crime.
Somebody messaged my
Yeah.
show to say I've just bought a quad bike off eBay from a bloke called Prince Andrew, but I don't know if it's really him. That's just a joke, by the way, in case anybody's wondering if it's true.
I just keep thinking William has had a terrible year, and this would set me over the edge.
Now
if I
they've
was
his
him.
quad bike.
Yeah.
I don't think it's
I'm not keen on the lack of shaving.
No, exactly. I'm not up with that.
No, you're all right. But,
anyway, listen, we're nearly at the end of the show. Coming up, we've got one more to go, and it's my final nomination. You're going to like this one. And any other week, I think it might win, but I'm not sure it will this week. It's all coming up after this. Welcome back to Plank of the Week, the final furlong. Here we are. We must now find ourselves in the car business. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever owned a Jaguar, or in America, as they say, a Jaguar. I once did. I always wanted an E-Type Jaguar because it was one of the most fabulous cars that anybody had ever made. Yeah. It was the design genius of Jaguar. You know, there was this leaping, big cat, this animal. They call it the Growler, funnily enough, the actual badge on the front. They do. They call it the Growler. It's a badge on the front of the car, and it's like
and we all love a Growler.
Baring its teeth, right? It looks amazing. Now, I'm sorry to tell you that they've decided to revamp their image at Jaguar.
No Growler.
I don't know if you've seen it. The Growler's gone. Right. Have a look at this.
Have you seen the badge that they've actually put on the car?
Yeah.
Have you seen the actual badge? It's hideous.
It's hideous.
It's like a good
Well, it's two
mess.
J's, right? So they've replaced the Growler with two J's, and they've got a leaping cat, right? On the side of the car. No laughing at the back. It's ridiculous, right? Elon Musk actually tweeted them and said, "Are you still in the car business?"
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't look like there's a car in the advert, doesn't it?
Back in the 1970s.
Yeah.
On the Sweeney.
Yeah, on the Sweeney.
Any self-respecting armed robber
gangsters
would drive a Jag.
Yeah, the Mark IV, wasn't it?
It was a Mark IV, wasn't it?
I'm like you, I wanted one of them.
What must any self-respecting blagger think as they watch that?
That looks like a transgender dinner party. I don't even understand what's going on.
Yeah, but also this doesn't look like...
What's he painting?
Friends of mine who've got Jaguars, they don't fit this demographic.
No, exactly right. Exactly right.
Unbelievable.
This is their Bud Light moment. This is like what happened to Bud Light. And it tanked
I think it really is. It's absolutely shocking. Shocking.
Wow.
Anyway, here we are. So what are we going to do? We've got a few
very
nominations.
strong feeling this week.
Keir Starmer.
I know, but I think
Rachel Reeves, I think.
The cupcake's brilliant.
I mean, Rachel Reeves. But Whoopi Goldberg is such a plank.
Yeah, she's a constant
plank. She's that much of a plank. I don't want to give it to her. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I think it's either Rachel Reeves or I think it's Keir Starmer or Rachel Reeves, isn't it?
Yeah.
Surely
Rachel Reeves, I think.
Sold it to her.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know whether Keir Starmer's going to... I mean, Keir Starmer could literally win this every single week.
Well, what you could do is you could add up how many he's got and give him plank of the week, the month, the year, the decade in his whole bloody life, couldn't you?
Well, I mean, the thing about Keir Starmer as well is that every time he goes abroad, and that was his 15th trip abroad, right, to go to Brazil, It's a complete disaster, right? He tried to chat up the president of China, President Xi, and you know what he did? Immediately after speaking to Starmer about, the rights and wrongs of human rights, he locked up a load more people in Hong Kong. He just arrested them and charged them with sedition or
Can
something.
I just ask a question?
And when he went to Germany, about 2 days later, the government collapsed.
Yeah.
He's literally the grim reaper.
Could I just ask a question?
Of
I don't want
international
anyone to take it the
affairs.
wrong way. He doesn't seem to want to spend much time at home, does he?
Why would he? It's all going horribly wrong. Nothing's going
I mean,
right.
at home. I mean,
you mean with
he
his
doesn't see
with
an
his
awful
wife?
lot of time with his
Lady
family.
Victoria.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he said that when he got into the job, do you remember that he had a very special private Friday night time at 6 o'clock? Yes. He would stop working because he needed to have family time with his children.
Yeah, what claptrap that
What happened to that?
Yeah.
There's another lie.
Can't wait to
Well,
get
I'm
away
going
from
to
it.
football on a Friday. You can't be with the family with the football.
No.
Liar Starmer.
Absolutely shocking. So I
The
guess,
Harmer Starmer farmer.
shall we make it? I think because of the farmers, maybe we should make it farmer, Starmer.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. One's for the farmers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Free gear, not here, no idea.
Two-tier.
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 Kia. Now you're
farmer Harmer.
Now you're plank of the week as well. Well done, that man.
Hey!
Thank you very much to Jeremy Kyle. Thank you very
Pleasure.
much to Mr. Bleksley. Thank you very much to Samara. Thank you to Will Geddes. We'll see you all this time next week.